Here we go, party people. Welcome back to Where My Killer Tape at, episode 81. Yes, we're back in season 5. What we're going to talk about? What I'm going to talk about. First, I'm going to talk about forgiveness in the white gaze. Yes, I'm talking about the Amber Guyger verdict and everything. And there's a lot of stuff that happened that I have not talked about. So we're going to talk about the verdict and the conviction and what happened during the conviction and how much Amber Guyger was given for that murder. We're going to also talk about Bring Back the Health segment, and I'm going to talk about martial arts. I'm going to do a review on Netflix, Seis Manos, that anime. We're going to talk about, give you some information on Nation of Gods and Earth. I'm going to do a review of the Ballad of Black Tom by Victor Lavelle, and I'm also going to do a review of Rapsody's third studio album, Eve. So, ladies and gentlemen, check it out. Yo, where my killer tape at, B?
This episode 81, I'm actually not sipping on alcohol, but I am sipping on hot apple cider. Oh my God, I love hot apple cider, man. It just really makes the heart feel so warm. So that's what I'm doing on it. So I'll be sober this time. Word. I found this jewel, I was just in the library and I found it and I was like, let me copy it because I'm a big fan of Victor Lavelle. One of my book clubs, we did Slap Boxing with Jesus, which is a great book of short stories, which I gotta get because I let somebody borrow that. I'm gonna talk about that. Anyway, it's called The Ballad of Black Tom. Really dope. I love like period pieces, particularly. I went to school in Harlem, so if you do like something that's done like in the 1920s in Harlem, it's really dope. I like reading the autobiography of Malcolm X as told to Alex Haley because a lot of it takes place in the 20s and 30s of Harlem, and I thought that was like really, really dope. Another book that I like is Man Child in the Promised Land because it takes some, those are nonfiction, by the way, and they take place in that time. So like, I really love those. So to find a fictional book that deals with voodoo and it deals with that style of era, the style of clothing that they're wearing and everything, I really love that. So I was really looking forward to reading it. It's a short read. I read it like 2 days, so highly recommend it. If you never read any Victor Lavelle stuff, this is probably something if you want a good introduction to it. I think Slap Boxing with Jesus is a good introduction to him, but now this one, The Ballad of Black Tom, is. Anyway, and it's about this guy who later became known Black Tom, and he deals with the supernatural. He deals with white supremacy and racism and police brutality using the supernatural. So I think I love when the villain is white supremacy in these kind of stories. I like when the villain is Jim Crow, right? Because to be quite honest, black folks in the United States pretty much had to be supernatural to overcome Jim Crow. So it is fiction, but it's very close to the truth. So dope read. Like I said, I read it quickly. Man, he writes really well. I wish I could write like that, but if you're looking for something to read real quickly, I think if you do it for a book club, you're going to get a lot of discussions about it, and you're going to see the parallels between the autobiography of Malcolm X and this one. And I think the jewel in this is that, because we need to see more stories about this, is it deals with the supreme alphabet used by the Nation of Gods and Earth. Some of y'all know him as a 5%er, so I thought that was real dope. It's real subtle how it's used in there. So I think that's really, really dope. Word. For those of you that have been following me for a while, even before I had the podcast, that a lot of my vernacular, a lot of the positions I come from, I learned from a group called the Nation of Gods of Earth. Some of y'all call them 5 Percenters. And there's been like a lot of hip hop artists that are members of this group. Wu-Tang Clan, Eric B. and Rakim. Rakim from Eric B. and Rakim. Anyway, a lot of people always ask me, where can you find more information about them? And I tell people really try to avoid the internet, because there's a lot of misinformation on the internet. There's a lot of people who are posing as members of that group, and they're not really who they claim to be. So I always reference people to a book put together by Supreme Design Publishing. It's called Knowledge of Self, a collection of wisdom on the science of everything in life, or Knowledge of Self. And it's edited by the brothers Supreme Understanding and Seabest A Life Allah. Then the homie Sunnis Allah. I know all of them. They're really dope brothers. They do a lot of work in the community. They all live in different parts of the country. And a lot of people, I know a lot of people that contributed to this book that are members of, that have been longtime members of the Nation of God's Earth. Like everybody that writes in this book has been, altogether, I'm going to say they have hundreds of years of membership and involvement and community involvement. So I highly recommend that you read that book, because it kind of gives you understanding of where they come from, and a lot of them, like where that cipher comes from their own experience. So I think it's really dope. Again, I highly recommend that book. I'm gonna put it in the show links. I'm gonna eventually do like a 3-parter on the Nation of God's Earth, and I'm gonna bring different members. I plan on doing it. It'll probably be in 2020 because I won't have time to do it. It's gonna be a 3-part. I won't have time to do it for in December, so it'll probably be in 2020. So I'm gonna put it in the show notes. So if you're interested in that, and you probably heard a lot of their lyrics and don't even know, and you probably use a lot of their vernacular. Like for example, if you say peace, that's where it came from. I'm not saying they were the first ones to use it, but they're the ones to use it regularly when interacting with one another, and it affected hip hop culture tremendously. Word.
It's all a game. It's all a game.
Well, when I released episode 80, it was the day of the verdict of the Amber Guyger case, and Amber Guyger was the police officer who murdered Botham Jean in his home. And let me just say this: when I posted, I was actually editing the podcast as the verdict came down, and I thought about adding another segment to that, but I was like, nah, let me just go ahead and do that, and then wait about a week before I discuss it. And I'm glad I did, because a lot of things happened right after the verdict was done. So first, let me just say that I was really surprised that she was found guilty. But then it was like a slap in the face, because like shit like this rarely happens, right? Where a white person kills someone black, or a police officer kills someone black, and they actually get convicted. Like, it's very rare in U.S. history, right? I think this happened maybe like once before, right? Like once before. But then again, white supremacy, capitalist patriarchy rears its ugly head. They were given Amber Guyger got 10 years. She got 10 years for murder. Which is astonishing. Wild. I run into a lot of young people who tell me that they know relatives that did, less than that for murder. You know what I mean? But then I know people who did decades for drug crimes, for possession of drug crimes. But that's another podcast for another day. So that, again, slap in the face. You're like, oh wow, conviction. You're like, wow, oh wow. But then it's like, oh, you only get 10 years. But it's what happened in the courtroom that really, really, I think that everybody's talking about, right? Because you see the brother of the victim here is Botham Jean. We see his brother go on the stand and hug Amber Guyger, and then give her forgiveness for it, right? And you're just like, whoa. And you see the judge come down, and you see the judge hug the Amber Guyger, which I've never fucking seen. I've never seen. I've been to court several times for other people. I seen it on TV, heard stories from other people, and quite honestly, the only time I ever seen the judge walk off the bench is when we're going into recess, or they're going on lunch, or they're clocking out, but never to come over to the side where everybody else is sitting at, right? It's usually to go to their chambers. You've never seen that, so let alone seen a judge hug someone, right? If anything, we've seen clips of judges berating, defendants. So that was mind blowing. Just so many things happened, and I had to kind of give it a couple of days to digest it, because of course you're angry. But I want to talk about I want to talk about two things. I want to talk about forgiveness, and then I want to talk about the white gaze. So we're going to get into that.
Yeah. I think Prince should run first on this one. I think so. Yeah. I think Prince should run first on this one. I think so.
So let's talk about forgiveness first, and I'm gonna just say this. Me personally, I'm real big on who I give and who I extend my forgiveness to. I'm really big on that, because we can say whatever we want, because I hear people say all the time that like forgiveness is overrated, right? Because I hear people say all the time, well, you need forgiveness so that you could move on. So you the victim, not the offender. You the victim need to give the offender forgiveness so that you can move on, right? And what I always tell people, what I always look at first, I always look at justice. Before I even look at forgiveness, I look at justice, right? Because oftentimes in forgiveness, we forget justice. And I think that when someone, and I gotta be like real specific with this because it's very nuanced, right? When I see usually in criminal justice, right? I don't know, that's a oxymoron, right? But when I see there, I often see situations where there is no justice, but the victim is being asked for forgiveness. And so from that context, right? And let me be real honest. Let's even talk outside of the criminal justice system. Let's look outside of that. Across the board, what I see is often the victim is asked to do work that the offender should be doing, right? I think a lot of times forgiveness is for the offender to be absolved of any guilt, right? And when I mean by guilt, I mean like they can go to sleep at night, right? Well, the victim has forgiven me, or the victim's family has forgiven me. I can move on. That's from what I've seen, and I've worked in the prison system, so I kind of see this all the time, where the actual offender is looking for forgiveness from the victim or the family of the victims. And a lot of times the victim or the family of victims don't want to give that forgiveness, right? Which justifiably so, justifiably so. And a lot of times it's because the victims don't see that justice is being served. And that goes in personal relationships too, because a lot of times you see people who are offenders who do you wrong or do someone else wrong, and then you forgive them and you let them back into your life, and they just repeat it again. They repeat that offense again, whatever it is, no matter how minute it is, it happens again. So a lot of times it's just easy to just move on. So now in the context of the Amber Guyger case, and I'm not trying to judge his brother, I'm not trying to judge the family, none of that. But I know oftentimes when you're wrong, when you're, I know wrong is such a small word, right? When when someone does something wrong, and I see this happen a lot of times when people are like bullied or harassed, they don't even want to go through the rigmarole of, let's sit down with this person and find out what happened. Okay, you're the offender. This is what you're going to be punished with, or etc. They don't even want to go through that because they don't want to relive that moment. They'd rather just be left alone. They'd rather all to be left alone. So they'll forgive the offender or the harasser, so they can just, be left. Like, I want to be done with this. I want to get it out the way. And that's really why a lot of us do that, right? We just don't want to go through, like when somebody offends us, we have to tell that person, hey, you offended me because of this. And a lot of times that person doesn't see that. And then you got to kind of go over it again. So you kind of go over that trauma over and over again. And you just don't feel like doing it. Sometimes you just want to move on. So you know what? I'm good. I'll accept the apology and move on. But again, even in that context, I see that the forgiveness is for the offender. It's really for them to be absolved of guilt. It's not really for the victim, because oftentimes the victim doesn't see justice, right? The victim doesn't see, well, you actually didn't learn your lesson because you're out here doing it again, right? You wronged me again, whether you've been dishonest with me or you stole from me or whatever, you're out here doing it again. So a lot of times that's why I say forgiveness is overrated, because really it's not really for the victim, it's for the offender, like for them, you know what I mean? So, and I think if we start looking at it like that, we're going to demand more work. And I think like it needs to be more work from the offender to prove to the victim that they really changed, right? Even in our friendships and in our family, like a lot of times people will say, hey, I'm sorry, can you please accept my apology? Would you forgive me? But you're like, I don't see you doing the work to fix that. And I think that's been my issue with forgiveness. I think, and I know, but there are a lot of people that say that forgiveness has been weaponized by Christians to use against, marginalized people around the world. I agree with that 100%, 1,000,000%. Like, when you look at the history of slavery and white supremacist capitalist patriarchy in this country, That is fact. There's no way you refute that. Christians try to, and you're like, nah, because you're really taking out of historical context. But that in of itself is another podcast for a different day. Word. But while we're talking about forgiveness, let's talk about the white gaze, right? And I know you hear me say the white gaze a lot. And I'm not saying white gay people. I'm saying white gaze, Gaze. White gaze is performing for white people, like doing things for white people. And a lot of us do it consciously, but I think a lot more of us do it subconsciously, especially when we deal in respectability politics, right? And we've already talked about respectability politics, but a lot of us do it for the white gaze. And again, like I said a few seconds ago, a lot of us do it subconsciously. And I think what happened, and again, I wasn't in that man's mind. I don't know what he was going through, but I know that when he sat there on that jury box, because he could, in that box, on that stand, he could have said anything else other than that, and I could tell that it wasn't rehearsed. It was something that just came from the heart. But I think subconsciously he did it for the white gaze, because he could have easily forgave her on the low separately. He could have sat down on his knees at his house one day and said, I forgive this person, right? He could have wrote her a letter and said, I forgive you. He could have visited her in jail and said, hey, I forgive you. He could have done it in so many ways. But I think really that was performing subconsciously for the white gaze, because the mainstream media is eating this shit up. Like the discussion about police brutality, the discussion about Black Lives Matter, the discussion about anti-immigration, the discussion about, the white supremacist capitalist patriarchy, the discussion about how the system propagates police brutality. None of that is being discussed. What's being discussed is, forgiveness. And it's definitely for the white gaze, right? And I think, like, when I look at people, and everybody knows how I feel about, and I know I'm going off on a tangent, Archbishop Desmond Tutu is someone who I think we seem to have forgotten. And he was an activist from South Africa who headed the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And they were these committees that sat down with the victims of repression, Black people from the apartheid regime. And across the table were the people that, the police officers, the policymakers, the white mobs, the gangs that had went and did all these things to Black people in South Africa. And they actually sat there and talked about what happened. So first of all, what happened is the victimizers, the offenders would tell the victim or the family of the victim, this is what happened to your family member. This is what we did to you. And then they turned around and forgave them. And then, there were no charges brought, et cetera, et cetera. And this was done throughout South Africa. It continues to this day. And then other parts of Africa have, other parts, not only Africa, but around the world, have used this model put together by Archbishop Desmond Tutu as a form of, reconciliation. I had a big issue with that, a tremendous issue with that, because a lot of people that committed these crimes never went to court. They never saw the inside of a court. Never were arrested, never were brought charges against them. And I think, as I talked about earlier, there was no justice that was served, right? And I think this is a farce. And I think, I honestly believe Archbishop Desmond Tutu did this for the white gaze, right? Because he's considered a darling. I think he won a Nobel Peace Prize. He's considered up there with the Dalai Lama, who also does things for the white gaze, right? Like subconsciously, consciously and subconsciously, both of them do. But he's considered those type of people. And I think that it's scary. It's really, really, really is, because it lets a lot, particularly white people, off the hook, right? Because those people are white. And I think that's completely unfair, because we're not given that form of humanity, right? Marginalized people are not given that form of humanity. So then I think they're doing this for the white gaze. And it's something that we really need to watch when it comes to performance. Again, I'm judging them for forgiveness, for the forgiveness part, even though I disagree with it. I think just the way it was done was for the white gaze. And that's why a lot of us are questioning it. A lot of us are like, whoa, like right after like the verdict, like it's like, whoa, like, well, hold on, son. So I think like that's something that needs to be discussed as well. Word. So somebody asked me, like, because I read a lot of comics and I cop a lot of comics, and
and they're like, yo, how you do it? Because comic books are expensive. And actually, me and Zemo talked about this briefly during one of our discussions about how, like, actually comic books, even though a lot of movies are based off of them, and a lot of TV shows are based off of them, they're actually like an outdated medium. And what we mean by that is that, you pay $3.99 or $4.99 a month, sometimes $2.99 if you're lucky, for 24 pages. I'm gonna even say 21 pages I'm gonna say 20 pages because the other pages are like ads, right? And you read that, I could read a comic book in about 6 to 7 minutes, and you read that, and then you gotta wait a month for the conclusion of that story, and you gotta wait 3 months for a conclusion of it. It's a story arc, right? Whereas streaming is a much more updated medium because they'll release a whole season of a particular story, and you get that season, and you got to wait, 6 to 8 months, and then you get another one. Boom. So and sometimes maybe a year, but you're subscribing to, a streaming service. So when you look at it, it's actually cheaper. For example, I read 5 titles per month. That's like consistent. And if I'm paying, $3.99 each, that's $20 a month for one episode of each story. So when you look at that and you're paying $8.99 to $12.99 for a streaming service, you're getting a whole bunch of stuff. So you see how I mean by that's outdated. And I know I got deep into it, but anyway, somebody say, well, how you do it? Well, this is what you do. I eventually ended up buying trades. There was a time when people would tell me to buy trades, and I went out there. When I mean by trades, I mean we call it trade paperbacks, TPBs, and you have what's called hardcover trades or HC trades. So you have 2 versions of that. People call them graphic novels, but usually they are trades, meaning there's 6 issues to a particular series, right? So if a series is at 150, you can buy X amount of trades that have 6 issues in them. So it's not really a graphic novel. Graphic novels are standalone. So I want to point that out. But if you go to places like Barnes and Nobles, you go to places like Books A Million, they usually have a lot of sales on trades, and you can buy them for like $5. Save you at least 20 bucks. So $5 for each. Or you can do what I do, which you got a little bit, even trades you got to wait, right? Because you got to wait for 6 issues to pass before they release a trade, if they do it, right? Because sometimes they don't. You can go to comic book conventions or Comic Cons, and you can go through their sales rack, and usually they'll sell them for like $1, and usually in the last day they'll have a fire sale. Or you can go to fire sales. A lot of places have fire sales where they get rid of, overstock. You can do those kind of things. And that's probably the best ways you can save money when it comes to that. I know there is Comixology, and shout out to For All Nerds show for reminding me of that, because I have a Comixology account I haven't updated in a while, and they usually sell stuff on bundles. So say for example, like when Suicide Squad comes out, they're gonna sell like stuff at like 50% off, so you can pick up a lot of different titles and do that there. So hope that helps you out if you're interested. And once again, thanks for that question, and shout out to For All Nerds. Word.
So this weekend I binge watched Seis Manos. It's like a mixed genre animation on Netflix. I wouldn't actually call it a anime. It has an anime style. It's kind of like Boondocks. Like Boondocks was done in the anime style, so I wouldn't actually call it an anime because it's not really that genre. Same thing with Seis Manos. It's drawn in the anime style, but it's a mixture of blaxploitation, Chicano style, and anime style in it. So it mixes all those genres together. I really thought it was dope. Wow, it was just on so many levels. A lot of people were saying that it was kind of like spoofy, but it isn't. I think the only parts that are spoofy is the blaxploitation part, because also that's actually played by Mike Coulter, who played Luke Cage on that Luke Cage series on Netflix. He voiced that. So Danny Trejo also stars in it. He plays the villain. I enjoyed it. It was actually, I think it's real quick to watch. It's 8 episodes and they're about 27 minutes each. So I ran through it real quickly. I like it because it's not a lot. You know what I'm saying? It gives you just enough, and it whets your appetite, and you're hoping on season 2. So it's really, really dope, and it leaves you in a lot of cliffhangers. It ends one story arc, and it opens it up for the next one. So it's really dope. The kung fu in it is really dope. The choreography is, the animation style is really dope. It got real violent at times. I didn't expect that, but it's really dope. So I wouldn't recommend you watching it with the babies. You know what I'm saying? But it's real. It gets real into that. And I like it because it deals with ideas of revenge. Like, is it something that you really need? So you have like the protagonist, the Seis Manos, or the six hands, 3 orphans who are like kung fu students, and they watch their sifu die, their master die, and they kind of like figuring out how to avenge his death, how to get justice. And one of them is like extremely super over the top violent, and the other 2 are not. I like the fact that the girl in the group, the woman in the group, she is like the most level-headed one, and one of them is like, he does drunken monk style, but he's still like more positive and cheerful, and then you have the extremely violent one. So I thought that was really dope. Highly recommended. I really, really do. And like I said, you can watch it real quickly. Word.
I feel really bad for this because at first I thought I did review it, but I didn't review it, and I really wanted to review it because I think, hands down, this is probably the best hip-hop album of 2019, and I debate anybody on that. I'm going to review Rapsody's third studio album, Eve, which has production by the wonderful Ninth Wonder, and also Crisis, and the homie Knots, and Eric G, who I'm not really familiar with, but I definitely love Ninth Wonder, and I definitely love the homie Knots. But anyway, I love the fact that each song is named after influential black women. So, for example, they have one for Nina, after Nina Simone, Oprah Winfrey, Serena Williams, Ibtihaj, who is she is the Olympic gold medalist who is a fencer. She's really dope. And even Hatshepsut. But anyway, I love it. I love the album. It's freaking dope. Man, I listen to it like literally every morning. Let me just say this. If you're not listening to Rapsody, then I don't know what you're doing. She's just an amazing MC. Her last album, which came out in 2017, actually got nominated for a Grammy. She didn't win, but I just thought it was dope that she was, because she would be considered, I hate to use this term, but underground rapper, but she is freaking dope. She can freaking write. And actually, what I noticed about her was she's featured on a lot of people's shit. Even Black Thought has her on her album. So anyway, the standout cuts to me, of course, is the first single, Ibtihaj, and it has the Jizza and D'Angelo, and she takes the Jizza's track from that song. Trying to remember the name of it, but anyway, it's a classic Wu-Tang song that was on Genius's first album, as a Jizza. She takes that beat and just fucking kills it. The video's amazing. And then, of course, the another favorite that I have is Oprah featuring the lovely Lekeli 47. I love her. I love Lekeli 47. She's super underrated. So she's on that joint. And then, of course, Queen Latifah comes hard on the Knots-produced Hatshepsut, which, man, is freaking dope. And then another joint that I listen to consistently is Maya featuring K. Roosevelt. So it's really, really dope. The Nina joint is the first song on the album, and I think it comes off hard as an introduction. I really think that, like, if you're gonna do an album, that the introduction should be fucking hard, and that's how you do that. So overall, man, I love this album. Like I said, I listen to it every morning. I let my students listen to it, and they love it. So it's really, really dope. Shout out to Rapsody. Hopefully, I get a chance to actually see it rock.
Lord of mercy, all night Sundays and crew. Follow me now, mercy, all night Sundays and crew. Follow me now, mercy, all night Sundays and crew. Follow me now, mercy, all night Sundays and crew. Follow me now.
A lot of people always ask me, like, and because I'm biased, right? So in this health segment, I'm going to talk about which martial arts you should choose. And I've talked about this before, but a lot of people ask me this, and which is cool. Like, I love talking about this. Like, so the question people always ask me is, how do I know which martial art is for me? And to be quite honest, I really can't answer that question. Now, of course, I'm going to say, oh, do capoeira, come with me, do capoeira, because I do capoeira, right? But, that martial art might not be for you. It ain't for everybody. As much as I like to kick it like it is, as much as I like to say it is, because it is physically demanding and it forces you to change a lot of habits. But quite honestly, I believe that there's a martial art for everyone. Like, for each person, there's something out there, whether it's Krav Maga, whether it's Wushu, whether it's Tai Chi, so whether it's Kalianis, like, it really is up to you to figure that out. The cool thing is that I'm gonna give you some ideas on where you can look and where you can find this stuff at. But just want to let you know that most martial arts schools, right? Most of them, I'm gonna say easily 80% of them, will give you a free trial, a free day trial. They will. Some of them will give you a whole week's worth. I see some people say we give you a whole week's worth. With no sign-ups, no money. You ain't got to give them your credit card number, none of that. They'll give you one class or they give you a week. And you could just go online and look, just go online in the local area and just, browse and find out. So that gives you an opportunity to shop around. I think that's dope. I think you can shop around and try different classes. And while you're there, like, talk to the students, like talk to the students that have been there for a while, the senior students. Talk to the students that have been there, not that long, but long enough. Like, talk to somebody that's been there 6 to 8 months, and then talk to somebody who's been there 2 years, and see what they get out of it. Like, see what they're, why did they, ask them why they took it in that particular, and also why they chose that particular instructor, because in each city, you're going to have different styles of martial arts, and they're going to have different instructors, and they all come from different styles. So you want to ask them why you go to this person versus the other person on the other side of town. Find that, do that research. The second thing I always ask people is, what are you looking for though? Like, what are you looking for? And this will actually determine the teacher that it's going to help determine the teacher that you get. Like, are you in it to lose weight? Are you in it to stay in shape? Are you in it to get rid of stress? Are you in it to compete, to fight? Are you in it to learn some sort of self-defense, to protect yourself or whatever? Those are important questions, because let me just say this. One instructor might teach for fitness, right? Another instructor might teach how to fight in the ring, like MMA or something like that, or to compete. Another one will actually teach self-defense. And another one might just teach it to boost your self-confidence, because some people go to martial arts for that. So that, to me, those are important questions you have to ask yourself. And it'll also determine what instructor you go to. So I think if you ask yourself that, then you could start that search. And then, of course, there's other things like affordability, geographic location, all those things will help you figure that out. But you kind of like got to do the research and find out what it is you want to find the perfect fit. And then to find because you could still find a martial art that you like, but you might not find an instructor you like, just like any other thing, right? So I hope that helps. Again, if you have any questions, you can hit me up on the Twitters, and it'll be in the show notes.
Episode 81, definitely got to give a shout out to the homie Leroy Bean and Darshiel for their lit exchange. I missed this month's lit exchange. I'm gonna make the next one, and what it is where people come into an event and the price of admission is a book that they donate and they like swap out. So it's pretty dope, because usually book readers come through, so it's like a fellowship. It's really, really dope. Definitely shout out to the homie Jason, who just had a born day. He told me to shout him out in the podcast, so I did, man. I see you and I love you, brother. Wish I could make your boxing match this month, but I'm gonna come to the next one. And shout out to the homie Bale Rock of the Rocksteady crew, who won So You Think You Can Dance. Yo, shout out to being the first B-boy to do that. Of course, B-boys and B-girls are always gonna rock. Word.
There you go, another episode. If you want to book me for panel discussions or workshops or lectures, you can just send it to my Gmail, and that's dntresomi at Gmail, dantrezomi at Gmail, and just put bookings in the header. If you just want to hit me up, there's an official Twitter for the show. Is at Omi's Podcast, OMIS Podcast, and then my personal Twitter, which I probably answered before the other one, is at dantrezomi. And once again, DANTRESOMI. All the other links I'm going to put in the show notes. You know what they are, so you know where I'm at. If you have any questions, hit me up. And thank you. Peace.